Hi guys, and welcome to a new video. So today I'm going to be giving my traditional cob Charlie a bath, and I'm going to be walking you through how to bath your horse, especially with sort of cobs with a lot of feathers and things like that. Obviously this isn't the textbook way, or isn't everyone's way of bathing. Everyone has their own different way of doing it, and that's fine. This is just my routine for bathing my horses. So the first thing that you'll need is a hose pipe and some water. You can obviously just use buckets and you don't have to use the hose pipe on the horse, but I choose to. So I like to fill this up before I bring Charlie up, and the other things that you'll need are some sort of shampoo. So I have a little bit of medicated shampoo left that I normally use on his legs. I also have some diamond white purple horse shampoo, and this is great for if your horse has a lot of white on them or they're a grey. And then I use the Megatech Rebuilder on his mane as a conditioner. As well as this, I generally use a nice thick comb, a brush and a sponge. So I also have a small bucket for washing him off with the water. You can use sort of a jug or something like that, but I find a small bucket's better because it holds more. And then I have a sweat scraper. I also have a rubber bucket that I use, so this is for when I wash out his feet, because I like to give his feet a clean beforehand, and this is just great because I can pop his feet straight in there. So before I bring Charlie up, I like to put a small hold hay net up for him because he's very impatient, as you'll see in this video. He gets very bored easily, and whilst he will stand, he doesn't always stand great. So I find if he has a little hay net, that always helps, especially for when you have a big cob like mine with lots of feather and he takes a long time to bath. So I've tied Charlie up outside. You'll see later on I had to move him inside because he gets really naughty and climbs the fence, but for the majority of the time when he's being good, he goes outside. The first thing I do is pick out his feet before I bath him, just because obviously that needs doing. So then I will take some water and a brush and maybe a little bit of the medicated shampoo and give his hooves a good scrub, just to give them a really good clean. Once the water's softened all of the mud on the hooves that's quite hard and what we haven't been able to get off with a hoof pick, then I'll go over with a brush and get that all off and scrape off all of the mud. So once I've got all of the mud off of the hooves and they're looking nice and clean, I like to brush away all this water because this is all the dirty water. So if you don't do this step, then you might find that the end of your feathers get really dirty. So the first part's actually starting to bathe the horse itself. I like to get some water and I do one side at a time, and you'll notice that I don't really do the legs. I might wet the legs a little bit, but I'm mainly just doing the neck and the body. The reason I do it like this is because when you have a lot of feather, I like to focus on that and the end. So I start by using a small bucket to try and wet Charlie thoroughly on one side, and I only do one side at a time because otherwise I find it dries too quickly. And then I'll move on to the hose pipe. Now obviously some horses don't like the hose, some horses don't mind it. Charlie doesn't mind it for a bit and then he sort of gets annoyed with it. So I tend to hose pipe him initially, and then if he starts getting a bit annoyed with it, I'll stop and just use the bucket. But obviously it's your horse's personal preference, just make sure they're thoroughly wet before you add any shampoo. So the next step, of course, is to add the shampoo. So I tend to mix a bit of my shampoo in the smaller bucket of water. I just find this is easier. Each bottle will have a direction of use on it, obviously, and I always tend to use more shampoo than they say to use, but it depends, especially because he's got so much white, he needs that extra shampoo. So I'll then use a sponge and then just apply this all over and just give him a nice scrub with that in circular motions to try and get all of that dirt out of his coat. He tends to really enjoy this actually. Charlie tends to not mind being bathed, he just gets a bit bored at the end, but he quite likes it when you're putting the shampoo on and giving him a bit of a massage at the same time. So once I've covered the majority of his trunk and his neck, I then take a little bit of neat shampoo and rub this in to any problem areas, so any stains, any areas where Charlie is particularly dirty. So Charlie always gets really dirty on the very top of his back, just because I think he's got such a flat back and with him rolling, and then on his rump, so right at the top of his bum. So I tend to just get a bit of neat shampoo and just to really rub that in there and sort of almost like scratch his back with it. And he tends to really enjoy this as well. So then I just rinse all of this off. You want to make sure that you get all of the soap out. Obviously you don't want any suds left. So I tend to use a hose pipe initially because that's just easier, and then I'll do the buckets at the end just to make sure he's thoroughly clean. And then I tend to move on and do the other side of his body. So I leave his legs until after this, and his mane and tail and everything. So I just do the other side of his body and then I move on to his mane. Now Charlie's mane is a big job just because he has so much hair and it is so long. So I start by dipping it in buckets to try and drench the hair as much as possible, because it's so thick it's actually hard to get it all wet. So I then tip a bit of the buckets and then I'll go on to the hose pipe just to make sure that it is all thoroughly soaked. Once it is all thoroughly soaked, I will get some neat purple shampoo and then I will start rubbing away into his mane and just trying to get this into a nice lather to then mix it all along his mane and to make sure that all of the hair is covered thoroughly. So once this is all nicely lathered up, I like to go through it with a comb just to make sure that all the hairs are nicely covered, and then I can leave it 5 minutes to do its job and sort of lift the colour slightly from this brassy yellow to a slightly lighter whiter colour. Obviously on the first wash like this of the summer it's not going to turn into a white mane, but we can hope. So once the shampoo has been left in the mane for about 5 minutes, I then rinse it off and put some conditioner in. So the thing I use is the Equestrian Rebuilder for his conditioner, and this smells so nice. If you like coconut, you will absolutely love this. So I just pop this in his damp mane, and again I'll leave it in for about 5 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer. Sometimes I might start on his feathers whilst this is setting into his mane, but just to make this video a bit easier for you guys to watch, I'll finish his mane before I move on to his legs. So once obviously that's been left in the hair for about 5 minutes, I then rinse that off, and that is his mane finally done. So it's generally around this point that Charlie starts throwing a temper tantrum because he doesn't like his mane being wet. So the next part are his feathers. These are the worst bit for Charlie because he just won't stand still. So I like to brush through his feathers first with a comb and then wet this. And you'll notice that he has quite scurfy feathers, so sometimes bits of hair and bits of sort of build up on his feathers comes out, which is absolutely fine. It's just something that we deal with by brushing through all the time with Charlie. And then I soak his feathers ready for the shampoo. Again, I apply this neat generally to his feathers because these tend to be quite dirty. So I'll apply a little bit neat and then rub that in all over the bottom half of his leg and into his feather region. And then I will mix some of this purple shampoo in the water and use a brush to brush all of his leg with it. I find this is the best way rather than using a sponge. It's easiest to use a brush on his legs because that seems to do more, it seems to get better results. And then once that is all done, I just rinse his leg off and repeat this for all 4 feathers. So Charlie decided to go into full tantrum mode and started climbing up the fence. So I brought him inside and finished off his feathers inside before I started on his tail. So finally for Charlie's tail, it is an absolute pain. I cannot even describe how thick Charlie's tail is. He just has so much hair. So I tried to wet his tail through using a hose pipe, but I tend to find I just have to sort of shove it in a bucket. And that's the only way to actually drench his tail through, and then I'll go over it, especially the top section with the hose pipe, just to try and get it as wet as possible. And so once it is as wet as I'm going to get his mega thick tail, I then take some neat shampoo, again the purple shampoo. I've just used that all the way through with this, and I use quite a generous amount of this just because he has so much hair. And I rub this into his tail, again exact same as what I did with his mane. So this generally takes me forever to try and get all of his tail clean. Obviously, again, it won't come mega clean the first time that you do this, but it is a start. And you can see Charlie tends to try and kick at the wall when you're doing things because he's just runs out of patience. So that's why he's doing that. So once his tail's nice and sudsy and hopefully covered in the shampoo, it's then time to rinse it off. And this is just as annoyingly difficult as trying to wet his tail. I literally just end up chucking buckets and buckets of water at his tail and hoping that it's all out. And then finally I give it a nice towel dry because otherwise it just won't dry. And I pop him in his stable.
Okay, so that is Charlie all cleaned and in the stable now. So I pop him in the stable just so when he goes out he's a bit drier. So I'll pop him in the stable for a bit just to dry off, because otherwise if I turn him out straight away when he's still a bit damp or wet, he will just roll and get grass stains. So now that I look a mess because he's nice and clean, it's time for me to just put everything away and then that's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope it was quite informative. As I said, it's not the correct way or the way you have to bath them. I just find that this is best for Charlie, and yeah, that's what I found works well for my traditional cob. So I'll see you guys soon. Bye.